Well, hello everybody. My name is Pauline Haycock and I am the celebrant here at Reynars Funerla Home. And before we get started, I just have a few announcements. And the first one is, if you have a cell phone, would you please be so kind as to turn the ringer off for the duration of the service? I see lots of you smiling when I ask that, so that's great. Thank you very much. And we're going to have an opportunity to come and share a short story or share a few kind words later in the service. So I'm giving you fair warning. Please, if you have a story that you'd like to share, I know the family would love to hear it. So think about that, and I'll give you a chance later on in the service to do that. And interment will be later on, and so you are invited to please stay. Don't rush off. Stay for some refreshments after the service. The family would love to have a chance to visit with you. So at this time, I'd like to ask you to please rise as the family comes to join us. Would you please pray with me? Heavenly Father, we are so grateful for the opportunity to gather together. We're thankful for the beautiful weather outside and the opportunity to say goodbye to Evelyn. And Lord, I just ask that you would comfort her family today. I ask that they would be encouraged by the words that are spoken here. And we thank you so much for the privilege that it was to have known her. We just ask all this in the name of Jesus. Amen. Well, on behalf of Evelyn's family, I would like to extend a sincere thank you for your attendance today. Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross is quoted as saying, "The most beautiful people we know are those who have known defeat, known suffering, known struggle, known loss, and have found their way out of the depths. These persons have an appreciation, a sensitivity, and an understanding of life that fills them with compassion, gentleness, and a deep loving concern. Beautiful people do not just happen." And as we've gathered to celebrate the life of Evelyn Wyant, I thought that quote was appropriate to start the service with. Evelyn's life was filled with a loving family, dear friends and co-workers, but she did face some difficult seasons in her life, and that could have caused her to become discouraged and defeated. Today we live in a world that avoids pain and difficulty. Evelyn, however, was born into a world that knew about pain and suffering. She lived through the Great Depression and World War II. She had to work hard for all that she had, and she experienced loss. Yet when I look at the picture on the front of the memorial card, I see such a pleasant face. Abraham Lincoln said, "Most folks are as happy as they make their minds up to be." And that is a very important life lesson, and I think Evelyn understood that. I often try to read the condolence page that Reynars has when somebody passes away. And I thought I need to look and see what people have put there in honor of her. And these are just a few of the comments that were posted. She was such a wonderful soul, very kind and thoughtful, and a positive outlook even in the worst of times. An inspiration to us all. I will always remember her beautiful smile and her infectious laugh. She was the kindest, most generous soul I have ever known. We used to sit and talk for hours. She was always there to lend a helping hand to whoever needed it. She had some very, very tough times in her life and a lot of heartbreak, but she never complained. Always tried so hard to understand. Those are amazing tributes, observations from people who knew her. Well, of course, we know that Evelyn was not perfect. None of us are. And she may not have done everything right. None of us do. But the time to criticize or complain is gone. Today is about honoring Evelyn and remembering her strengths and her achievements. And one of her greatest achievements was you, her family. And she was so proud of you. A mom or a grandma is one of the most important, influential people in our lives. A mom loves us unconditionally. When we're small, she feeds us, clothes us, she protects us from harm, and she disciplines us. And as we grow, she's our cheerleader and our conscience. And even when we are grown, she never stops wanting the very best for us. She continues to take pride in our accomplishments, often becoming our confidant. She ceases to be our mother, and she becomes our friend. Then one day the tables turn, and our mothers age, and they need us in a way that we never dreamed possible. And in some small way, we feel that we can repay just a fraction of what we owe to the amazing woman that we call Mom. Family today is going to be bittersweet. Bitter, of course, because you've lost a precious part of your family, and sweet because of the memories and the time spent together. And Howard, I know we didn't talk about what kind of cook your mom was, but I did find a recipe that just may have been tucked away somewhere in her cupboards. It's called A Recipe for a Good Life. And it says, take 2 heaping cups of patience, 1 heart full of love, 2 handfuls of generosity, a dash of laughter, 1 handful of understanding. Sprinkle generously with kindness, add plenty of faith, and mix well. Spread over a period of a lifetime and serve to everybody you meet. Sounds a lot like Evelyn. So at this time, we're going to ask Evelyn's grandson, Darren, to please come and share the eulogy with us.
Thank you, Pauline, and thank you everyone for coming this afternoon. I think I can speak on behalf of the family that we appreciate very much you being with us at this time, and I have the privilege of, or the honor, I would say, of standing here for my Uncle Howard and sharing this for him. And we want to maybe just take a moment and acknowledge some of the family that has come from great distance that I know of. And I'd like to say hello to Aunt Dorothy and her son Ron, all the way from Langley. Be my grandma's only surviving sibling. It's so nice to see you again. And also from California, we have my Aunt Mila here in the front. You haven't changed hardly a bit. It's amazing. Good to see you again. And her daughter, Donata, is traveling with her. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, Sarah.
And we have, I think, from Calgary, my Uncle Richard. Nice to have you here. Is your wife, Abby, with you? No. Okay. Okay, I just didn't want to miss her. Also, my grandmother's niece, Sonia, and Neil. Thank you for coming. That's really special. My brother Avery had just driven quite a distance from Idaho to the Midwestern U.S. and then got this news and turned around and traveled from Idaho with the family up to here. And we wish we could see you at different circumstances, but glad that you could come on such short notice. And I believe Brenna drove up from Prince Rupert. It's quite a drive. Thank you for coming. And also we have Brenna is a granddaughter of Evelyn, and also her brother Kyle and Harmony are with us. Nice to have you here. Thank you. So, and I think now it would be very suitable to say that as a family and as a people that knew Evelyn, we could stop and say thank you to Howard for all he has done in caring and being there for Grandma, those hours and all that love. And when no one else could reach her by phone, you were always reliable to let us know how she was doing and what her needs were. So we heartfelt say thank you and deeply appreciate all that you've done. I was always very happy to have a grandmother that had studied Taekwondo with my Uncle Howard, had skated with us as boys, had always been willing to spend time and to listen, and was willing to come to everywhere she was invited, every event, every ceremony. So Howard put some very nice words together here, and let me share them with you. Evelyn Faye Wyant Johnson Browns. Our mother did not have a lot of things, but the one thing she had was true grit. Evelyn Faye Browns was born February 9, 1929 in Grand Prairie, Alberta. The second born of Boyd and Gladys Browns, her first task in life was already upon her, teaching her older brother Ken to talk. And he said she got an A in this endeavor. For those who remember her brother Ken, she may not even be forgiven for doing so well. Ken was known for the rest of his life for talking people's ears off. And that's how her love for visiting perhaps got started. Evelyn was soon joined by younger siblings Bert, Bud, and Dorothy. In 1940, the Browns family moved to the Pine Valley. Here the Browns homesteaded, trapped, fished, farmed, and made moonshine. Here Evelyn enjoyed looking after the farm, animals, and riding horses. It was also here in the Pine Valley she met the first love of her life, Elvin Johnson, at age 15. But as Paulina said, her life was not always easy. Because her first test, you could say her first test of how much grit she had or how much true grit she had to go in front of a judge at 15 to ask permission to marry at 16. Her father did not approve of her leaving home, as he had started a feud with the Johnson family years before over trapping rights. So, Grandma had to deal with this, and on top of that, her father was one mean and true SOB. known for only one thing, and that was making moonshine. So she managed to get married, and she was married when she was 16, and their first child, Mona, was born the following year. After Mona was born, Gladys, her mom, wanted to see her granddaughter, and arrangements were made for Evelyn and baby Mona to come visit. Unfortunately, Boyd, her father, who had disowned Evelyn when she married Elvin, had still not forgiven them and refused to let them on the family property. Evelyn and Mona had to turn around and go home without the visit. She only learned many years later that this was the last day her mother had had enough and left Boyd. Gladys packed up her two youngest children who were still living at home and caught a ride to Dawson Creek. And Evelyn grew up knowing what alcohol does to people, and she never had a drop of it until her mid-50s, when she started enjoying white wine and then beer, but only one a day with her dinner. And on special occasions after that, she would enjoy a second beer. And later on, if you knew her later, it did turn out that Brother John Brewhouse turned out to be one of her favorite stores. She brewed and bottled her own beer faithfully for years, but she knew how to manage it. Evelyn was happily married to Elvin and son Richard, and soon, Richard, Mila, Larry, they're all here this afternoon. They joined Mona in the family. In 1954, when Evelyn was just 25, tragedy struck. When her husband, Elvin, was killed while felling trees on a work site in Penn Valley. Now widowed and raising 4 children, she began helping her mother and brother Ken with a new family business, the Brown's Cafe. The cafe was a booming business while the BC Rail Line and Highway 97 were constructed through the Pine Pass to Dawson Creek. And this was how she happened to meet George Wyant, who was working on the construction. They fell in love and they were married in 1959. Evelyn and George settled in Gundy. George had property on the Alberta side, but it had no power. So they purchased a place on the BC side. In 1960, Howard was born. And the Wyant family continued to farm until tragedy struck again. As fate would have it, George developed health problems. Shortly after their marriage, he passed away on January 2nd, 1967. Evelyn would be 38 at that time. She was devastated. The tragic losses of her 2 husbands were too much for her, and she refused to date ever again. This didn't stop other men from trying. She received 2 proposals from men that she thought very highly of. She just couldn't bring herself to marry again. She was now content to raise her family and live out her life. In 1970, she lost her younger brother, Bert, who she'd been very close to. Then her mother, in 1972, also passed away. And life was hard for Evelyn between 1967 and 1980, raising a family of 5, widowed with no pension, and having no formal education beyond grade 5. But she did the best she could, and we're so happy for that. In 1969, she moved to Dawson Creek to be closer to work. Here she moved from working at the trading post to the travel lodge, washing dishes and cleaning rooms, then to the Black Lantern restaurant. All these jobs were at minimum wages, and finances were difficult. She finally got a big break when she went to work for Home Support Services. She loved the job of working with the elderly, and they paid a decent wage. Evelyn continued to work with Home Support until she retired at age 68. I was hoping to meet some of her clients, but that may be asking a lot, because she passed away at 89, so that might be hard. But he said, now remember, Evelyn's first husband, Alvin, died in 1954. She'd been getting a widow's pension from WCB until she remarried to George in 1959. But there was a rule: if a widow remarried, they were no longer eligible to receive the pension. Unbeknownst to Evelyn, a group of other widows who had also lost their pensions due to remarrying started a class action lawsuit against the WCB. And to make a long story short, in 1996, the courts decided that these widows should have not lost their pensions, and they awarded back pay for the portion they had lost and reinstated the pension payments. And the back pay and pension income opened up Evelyn's life like a dream come true. She was able to move from her own apartment to a strata home in Parkside Villa, and she could travel. She loved cruises and other trips, but mostly she loved to see her grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And she tried never to miss a graduation ceremony, and was so proud to see anyone in the family graduate, because she knew how important education is for success in life. Just a little bit about her that we want to share. All of Mom's life, she liked the water, so swimming had become her natural therapy, and she loved going daily to the pool and swimming laps, and thoroughly enjoyed the hot tub and sauna. And she had the longest continuing pool membership with the new Aquatic Center. And when the new Aquatic Center opened, she was asked to be at the opening ceremony. She declined because that kind of thing did not interest her. Mom also loved music and the arts. For years, she was a huge fan of the Dionysus Theater Company and South Peace Secondary School Theater, rarely missing a performance. And she also developed a passion for garage sales and dog walking in her retirement. She loved all animals and always supported the SPCA. And those that knew her knew if you ever had a time to visit her, she always had a cat, usually more than one. So that was certainly true. And it was by request, we are also told to add she loved killing dandelions. And this was definitely part of her retirement route. She'd come over and dig up Uncle Howard's yard, just for enjoyment. And part of her life, she says, for perspective, she grew up in a hunting family. And she earned all of her spending money as a young girl by shooting squirrels for 10 cents each. And then while World War II was going on, the Air Force gave all their pilots hats made from squirrel hides. So she was part of the war effort at a young age. And Evelyn once had to shoot a grizzly bear caught in a trap. She understood that hunting and trapping were part of life, but she felt that traps were cruel and never liked that story. And speaking of bear stories, Evelyn had one of the scariest. When Mona was just 1 or 2 years old, a very large black bear broke the cabin window just above the crib where Mona was sleeping. Evelyn said she remembered screaming at it at the top of her lungs while trying to load bullets into her .30-30. And their dog Mutt was barking at it, but she was so scared she couldn't hear a sound. Luckily, the window was too small, or the bear was too big, for it couldn't get in and left. Alvin and his brother Ivor hunted the bear down the following day and shot it. I still remember Mom telling that story. Evelyn was a lady who knew when to not back down. She herself was like a mama bear, but at 5 foot 2 inches. Howard says when he was 11 or 12, 2 of his childhood friends were over playing at their apartment. When their mother stopped in around 9 o'clock that night, she was drunk and mad and wanted to take them home. They were really scared to go home with their mother in that condition. So Evelyn came to the door and said no, that the kids were going to stay with her for the night, and when the mother sobered up, she could come get them. There was a lot of name calling and threats made, but Evelyn wouldn't give an inch until the mother left for the night. 30 years later, Howard's friend dropped in out of the blue and started reminiscing that this had been a turning point in his life, and that Evelyn standing up for him and his brother had helped them a lot. He was happy to know she was still alive and insistent on going to see her and giving her a big hug. Another time was when Mona and her first husband split up. Mona came to live with Evelyn. Well, like all separations, emotions were running high. He came to see Mona, and he wasn't taking no from myself, Howard, at age 12 to 14, who had answered the door. He blew right past me and started going upstairs to find Mona. At the top of the stairs, he ran into Evelyn, and she made it clear that the only way he was going to see Mona was through her, and he backed down. Those are character lessons Howard learned from his mom, and I believe they still hold true. He says, once when he was 10 or 11, I was driving Mom crazy with my whiny to buy me a Meccano building set, and money was tight, so play toys were scarce. Anyways, we were in Kmart downtown, and I know I was bugging her to no end, and we somehow ended up outside the store, almost to the car, when Mom realized we had left the store without paying for it. Well, this was a bonus for me. It was free. But not for Mom. She marched me back in and paid for it. I try to remember that lesson all the time. Nothing is free. Her conscience wouldn't allow it. That was the only thing she gave her father credit for. He was intolerant of lying and cheating, and it literally scared her to do either. He also shares another one of my favorite memories of Mom was one night in the winter. We were coming home in the car, and it was snowing on 96 Ave. And Mom and Larry and myself were in the car, and Mom stopped to help this lady who was stuck on the road. We all got out to help push. But this lady, either drunk or just wouldn't listen to Mom on how to rock the car back and forth. Well, after a couple of tries, and this lady who just kept flooring the gas pedal, it made Mom snap. She just up and literally commands us to get into the car and leave. Well, Larry and I were kind of confused because we knew we could probably push her out. But Mom had had enough of the lady not listening and said that lady doesn't deserve our help and we're going now. He said, I learned a lesson. You can't help those who wouldn't take your help and advice. I have some other comments from my brother Avery. He said, when I was 18, I got on the bus to leave Dawson Creek, which at the time I didn't realize was a permanent thing. I remember her standing there crying as the bus drove away. Maybe because she was older and wiser, she knew I wouldn't be back to live. And another big event in my life was before I left for the Middle East for my 4th time, and my son Logan was a baby. I was sad because I had to leave, but Grandma was visiting me in Idaho, and I asked her to clip the strings off of my desert uniforms, which she did like it was her job, without complaining, and proceeded to make sure that my patches were also fixed properly. And I wondered if other people had had such a great grandma who would fix their uniforms before they left for war. Avery says, I'm not a very emotional person, but I am when I think of my grandma. In my mind, she was perfect in every way a person could ask for. Said I didn't realize she wasn't perfect until I was in my late 30s. I was at my Aunt Mila's wedding, and Grandma's best friend, Astrid, was telling me that she didn't like traveling with Grandma because she complains if the potatoes weren't real. She didn't like the ones that came from a box. He says, I guess she was human. He wanted to say, I love her and miss her always. Avery says, I want to speak just a moment. I put a little section on this, just what she leaves behind. We've spoken of her life, but Avery says, One of my earliest childhood memories was of me sleeping with Grandma. My parents were divorced when I was young, but I always felt comfortable with her. She didn't judge me. She loved me for who I was, not for who I thought I should be. And so a lot of Grandma, what she leaves behind is not necessarily an achievement that we could point to, but as has been written, some of the effects and some of the lessons that her life spoke, at least it spoke to us that were there. She was not one known as a complainer. She was not one to make excuses. Like, I never heard from her that she only had a grade 5 education. I did not know her to be bitter, and I would say despite her difficulties, she never made those a major. And inside that time, or that Grandma really had an atmosphere about her that as a grandson you would certainly felt loved. And now in her, as said, she retired at 68. She began to be able to travel and spend some time with the children and the grandchildren, attending different events that were important to them. And part of what she leaves behind is, of course, the grandchildren that are here today and not with us. Howard, 2 children, Max and Emma. Emma's middle name is Emma Lee Fay, and Fay was from Evelyn. It was something that, just a testimony of her influence on the family. And my brother Avery, his daughter Riley, he has a son Logan and a daughter Riley. Her name is Eve, Riley Eve. And Grandma actually happened to be there when they found out it was a boy or a girl. And when they found out it was a girl, Avery said, "Grandma, her name is Eve, after you." And was that? And then we have another great-granddaughter. They're not here today. They have young children and live in Vancouver. Gwen and Leonard Tam. Their second child, they have a son Freddie, and then they had a daughter. And that daughter is also named Evelyn. She's just 2, but she took Grandma's name, or was given Grandma's name. And so when we look at it from that point of view, she of all her children that had a family, her name lives on in every one of those children. She just had an influence that endured. She didn't have much of a home, or clothes, or cars. She maybe didn't have a great name or important friends, but she certainly left an imprint on the family. We just remember her very dearly. Howard would say in conclusion, "You might ask where I use the term true grit. Well, to me, like Rooster Cogburn in the movie, who never quit until his job was done, no matter what the odds were against him. Mom never quit being a mother. No matter what, she was always there for us kids, or her immediate family or extended family whenever she was needed. Could be to loan money, could be to leave her job and go help. Whatever was required. If she needed to join Taekwondo to help her son get some discipline, she would go and do it. No matter what the cost to her was, she only cared about one thing, finishing the job of being the best mother, grandmother, to the best of her abilities." So thank you for letting us share that. I'm gonna let Pauline.
Thank you. What a beautiful tribute. Painting a lovely picture, a thorough picture. So this is now going to be your turn. Is there somebody who would like to come and share a few kind words or a short story? We won't wait long. We don't want you too uncomfortable. Come on. Yeah.
Evelyn was a great friend of mine. She was a true friend, a dear friend. She used to spoil our dogs a lot. She would buy them toys. She bought them a snake, a cloth snake. Like it was for the door to keep the cold draft coming in. And Evelyn would come over and clean our house on 13th Street in Dawson Creek. There's a 3-bedroom house. And Rascal was our dog. And she bought Rascal a snake. And every time Rascal seen Evelyn come over, she used to bring that snake out, and no one else could take it away from her except for Evelyn. I couldn't take it away, but Evelyn could take that snake away. And she bought Rascal some other toys. And we couldn't take those toys away from Rascal. It was Evelyn that could do it. She knew Evelyn every time she came in that house. Evelyn did a good job. She was a good homemaker. She was a good friend. She was a true friend. I couldn't ask nothing. I couldn't say nothing about Evelyn, bad about Evelyn. She was a dear friend. I was shocked to hear about her funeral today. I'm just devastated. She did lots for me. She was a person that would say hi to you. You could phone her and she would talk. I can't say nothing bad about her. She would go of her way to do extra around the house for you, to help you clean the house. She was my homemaker. And she does a wonderful job when she did it. I can't say nothing bad about Evelyn. I miss her dearly. Everything that guy said about Evelyn, I remark about it. She was a dear friend. And I give Evelyn all the support. And I thank you as a family for being there for her. I just thank you for all the support you guys have been to her over the years. Thank you.
I first met Evelyn when she and her children moved to Gundy after she married George Wyant. Our families became close friends and still are. I chummed around with Mona and Melvin when they were teenagers, my two youngest brothers and Howard spent a lot of time together creating a bad impression.
Yeah.
Evelyn really had a tough time in her life, losing two husbands and having to raise her children on her own. I remember her being very helpful to seniors in the neighborhood. She took them to town when they didn't have a car, so it's understandable that she went to work as a homemaker later on. She found her purpose. Lately, her body let her down. She couldn't go to the swimming pool anymore, which she just loved doing. I hope they have a nice swimming pool in heaven for her. I believe we will see each other again someday. So I won't say goodbye. I'll just say till we meet again.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else who'd like to come up?
I've known Evelyn for a short period of time. She was my wife's homemaker. And I often would go behind the high school and I'd often meet her there walking her dogs, and we'd always have friendly talk. So I really appreciate her and all that she's done for people around. I've had a lot of the same clients as she had. I used to do yard work for senior citizens around this town, and they've always appreciated the work that she's done for different people, and so I always say goodbye to her. And just thank the family and everybody here. Hope the best for her.
Good afternoon. I'm Donata. I think I'm her probably 8th grandchild. Lucky mom of her 2nd or 3rd great-great-granddaughter. Of course, when I found the news out, I'm lucky to live in California. I'm not here in Dawson. I didn't get to send my kids home with grandma after school, or any of the blessings that you've all got to enjoy of having her in your life regularly. But I got to go through in my mind all the things that she did share with me. After 1996, when she did have money to spend to come to California, she came to every single one of my graduations since I was a teenager. When I graduated high school, I had the great fortune of coming up here to Dawson and realizing, well, I'm going to college, but I really want to learn what's happening up here, because I had spent a lot of my childhood not knowing my relatives and my family up here, and a lot of the draw was getting to know my grandma. So when grandma passed, I thought about that summer that I spent up here, and I thought y'all might appreciate some of the things that I think about when I think of my grandma, because when she moved into that condo, we got the joy of spending that summer together. And probably one of my most distinct memories is her on her sun porch with her cats, just enjoying that sunshine. And me living in California, I have sunshine quite a bit, and her just appreciation for the sunshine every time she saw it, every single moment she had, whether it was behind the glass in her sun porch or getting into a very hot car in the parking lot. We drive around with those windows rolled up and think about how lucky I was to live in California, where my grandma really taught me that, being up here in Dawson. So I thought that was a chance to kind of bring some of the light to what she taught me as her granddaughter. Of course, when we were doing that, we were going garage sailing, we were going to the pool. She was staying up way too late watching TV and falling asleep in her rocker. She was very proud to be able to offer me a bedroom in that condominium that she had, and I enjoyed it very much. But as far as that beer and wine thing, she did offer me a beer for breakfast. Every morning I was there, and I was 17. So I don't know where that was, and she did teach me how to make beer and wine in that local shopping center, wherever she did that. So, I think a lot about all the things I learned. I brought home a lot of souvenirs. I still come up here every time I visit Dawson. I brought my kids up a couple summers ago. These roots hold true, and they came with us to California. We're pretty far away, but It means a lot to me to be here, and I know it's a sad moment, but it's also a celebration of her life and what she taught each and every one of us. And her grandchildren are not an exclusion by any means, even if only a few of us could make it up here. So I speak for the California contingent, but there's plenty of other provinces and distances that we've all traveled. And Grandma was proud to come and see us when she could. And I know the last conversation we had, she was told both Avery and I she just hopes to come see us next. So love you, Grandma. You're the best.
Anybody else? I didn't know Avery's grandma prior to meeting him, and 23 years ago I met Avery, and we've been married now 16, 17 years, and but she actually was a homemaker for my mom, who was mentally ill, and my mom passed away 4 years ago, but it's kind of a neat connection that she actually looked after my mom when she couldn't, and Howard, you did a wonderful job with your mom. You were always there, and I admire that. And she was true grit. She, in conversations, sometimes just driving, when I would come up and visit, and I would be here with my kids, and the stories she would tell between Grand Prairie were amazing. But I kind of along the lines with Donata about the beard thing was kind of a funny story. I think one of the first times I was out visiting after Avery and I were dating, and there was Grandma in her car, and she said she just went through the checkpoint, and she goes, yeah, I had an open container. I just put my sweater over top of it. They weren't going to suspect an old lady. She just drove on through, was down through, and I thought, it made me chuckle. I shared that story when we were driving up here from Idaho. I said to Avery, I said, the funniest story I can remember is your grandma talking about going through the checkpoint, just throwing her sweater over top of her homemade beer. And I'm like, and she had no thoughts about it. She goes, oh, it's just one beer. And that's my fond memory. She was a beautiful lady, beautiful soul, and I know my husband adored her, and our children love her. And she was a special lady to all these lovely people in this room, and touched us all. And thanks, Evelyn. Anybody else to come? I'm hesitating because I think I know there's something still to come.
You'll just bear with me. I hope this is enjoyable. Howard gave me something that he had kept in his office for many years, and it was a gift from Grandma. He said he got to me too, and when Howard and I worked together, and he said this always got feedback, always got comments, and he kept it because it reminded him so much of his mom, Grandma, Evelyn. So he says, the title of the card is Anyway. People are unreasonable, illogical, and self-centered. Love them anyway. If you do good, people will accuse you of selfish, ulterior motives. Do good anyway. If you are successful, you win false friends and true enemies. Succeed anyway. The good you do today will be forgotten tomorrow. Do good anyway. Honesty and frankness make you vulnerable. Be honest and frank anyway. People favor underdogs, but follow only top dogs. Fight for some underdogs anyway. What you spend years building may be destroyed overnight. Build anyway. People really need help and may attack you if you help them. Help people anyway. Give the world the best you have and you'll get kicked in the teeth. Give the world the best you've got anyway. And she says, congratulations, guys. All the best, Mom and Grandma. Thank you.
All right, we have a song.
She trembles in the darkness while lightning roll about. Ain't gonna need this house no longer, ain't gonna need this house no more. Ain't got time to fix the shingle, ain't got time to fix the floor. Ain't got time to hit the door, to hit the window pane. Ain't gonna need this house no longer, I'm getting ready to meet my Saint. This old house is getting shaky. This old house is getting cold. This old house is in the rain. This old house is in the cold. And my knees are getting chilly when I feel no pure pain. I see an angel peeping through the broken window pane. Ain't gonna need this house no longer. Ain't gonna need this house no more. Ain't got time to fix the shingle. Ain't got time to fix the floor. Ain't got time to hit the door to hit the window pane. Ain't gonna need this house no longer. I'm getting ready to meet my Saint. My old hound dog made a sweet one. He don't know I was gonna leave. Asked me to sit there by the campfire and howl alone and breathe. But my hunting days are over. Ain't gonna hunt that coon no more. Gabriel gun got dropped the chariot with the wind blew down the door. Ain't gonna need this house no longer. Ain't gonna need this house no more. Ain't got time to fix the shingle. Ain't got time to fix the floor. Ain't got time to hit the door and the window pane. Ain't gonna need this house no longer. I'm getting ready to meet my Saint.
Obviously, that was a good choice. I saw lots of smiles there. Well, I heard a story about a little cork that was floating in the middle of the ocean. A whale was swimming by and happened to see that little cork floating there. So the whale flipped his tail at the cork and playfully pushed it deep into the water. And do you know what happened? The cork popped back up. The whale was confused and he swam by, and this time it jumped into the air and landed on the cork with all its massive weight. A few moments later, the cork popped back up to the surface. Soon other whales gathered around and each took turns trying to sink the cork, but each time it would slowly pop back up. Finally, the cork looked at the whales and said, "I'm not made of the stuff that sinks." That's Evelyn. Why would I tell you that little story? Because it's a good analogy of Evelyn's life. You see, you might not know about cork. Cork comes from a tree, the cork tree. And the bark plays a crucial role in the making of engine gaskets, flotation devices, fishing rods, and of course wine, just to name a few things. The cork oak generously produces its resilient bark year after year. If harvesters strip the bark, the cork oak gradually grows another coating within about 10 years. The second growth is of finer quality than the first. If the second is removed, the third grows in its place, and again, it is of a finer texture than the second, and so on, and so on. Thus, the very finest cork is from the oldest trees. And once the tree has attained the age of 45 or 50 years, the cork oak is found to possess the qualities for making the finest wine corks. It's amazing that this unique bark can fill all these needs without the tree being felled. What a little tree. It's productive, it works hard its whole life, and it gets better with age. That sounds like a lot like Evelyn to me. Can we please have the PowerPoint?
Just one little candle can shine through the night, a symbol of faith, a flame that keeps burning, that never stops turning the darkness away. Light a candle to start a new dawn. Let it be like a prayer, and together we'll shine in a moment of time we can share. Light a candle to start a new dawn. Life is forgiving for those who are living in love's ray of light. And life is for caring, so never stop sharing your beacon so bright. Light a candle to start a new dawn. Let it be like a prayer, and together we'll shine in a moment of time we can share. Light a candle to start a new dawn. We can unite the world from one tiny spark. It's better to light a candle than curse the dark. Light a candle to start a new dawn. Let it be like a prayer, and together we'll shine in a moment of time. Yes, a moment of time we can share. Light a candle to start a new dawn. Light a candle to start a new dawn.
I was standing by my window on one cold, cloudy day when I saw that hearse come rolling for to carry my mother away. Will the circle be unbroken by and by, Lord, by and by? There's a letter on the wedding in the sky, Lord, in the sky. Well, I followed close behind her.
Hey, get rhythm when you get the blues. Hey, get rhythm when you get the blues. Yes, a jumpy rhythm makes you feel so fine. It'll shake all your trouble from your worried mind. Get a rhythm when you get the blues. Little shoeshine boy never gets low down, but he's got the dirtiest job in town, bending low at the people's feet on the windy corner of the dirty street. Well, I asked him while he shined my shoes how to keep from getting the blues. Grinned as he raised his little head, he popped a shoeshine rag, and then he said, get a rhythm when you get the blues. Hey, get a rhythm when you get the blues. It only costs a dime, just a nickel a shoe, does $1 million worth of good for you. Get a rhythm when you get the blues. Hey, get a rhythm when you get the blues. Yeah, get a rhythm when you get the blues. Yes, a jumpy rhythm makes you feel so fine. It'll shake all your trouble from your worried mind. Get a rhythm when you get the blues. Well, I sat down to listen to the shoeshine boy, and I thought I was gonna jump with joy. Slapped on the shoe polish left and right. He took a shoeshine rack and he held it tight. He stopped once to wipe the sweat away. I said, you mighty little boy to be working that way. Said I like it with a big wide grin. He kept on popping and he said again, get a rhythm when you get the blues. Hey, get a rhythm when you get the blues. Get a rock and roll feeling in your bones, put taps on your toes and get gone. Get a rhythm when you get the blues.
So much more that we could say about this lady. Family, you've done a beautiful job bringing tribute and honor to her today. Amazing lady with an amazing story. And I'd just like to close our time together with a poem. It's one of my very favorite poems to read at a service, because I think it speaks to what we would all want to say to our loved ones once we're gone. I'd like the memory of me to be a happy one. I'd like to leave an afterglow of smiles when life is done. I'd like to leave an echo whispering softly down the ways of happy times and laughing times and brighten summer days. I'd like the tears of those who grieve to dry before the sun of happy memories that I leave when life is done. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for Evelyn. And I thank you for testimony of her life. Thank you for her legacy and what she's left behind for her family. And I ask that you would help them to look to that true grit, to look to that example, and apply those things that were dear about Evelyn to themselves. And above all, Father, I ask that you would make yourself real to them, that they would look to you for strength and encouragement and comfort in their grief. Thank you that you are ever present and always near, just a prayer away. We thank you so much for this time together, and we just ask your blessing on the rest of our time. In Jesus' name, amen. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please rise for Evelyn?